Greetings. Thank you for hearing me. They said there was a famine in Ireland. And drove them off the land, straight to the port, to the island, Ellis Island, Some say they sent it all away. The only record is in a house they call a workhouse. Listen for the way. Oh, it wasn't too long. They sent them all away. Be a street walker, protect everything you got, your folks so say no. As she came off the ship, her head tucked down, her chin real neat. She tucked the jewelry away, but they know where to look, so you better watch your way. Kept a nice dagger in her garter belt. She said, hey, I'm ready for any dirty man wanna touch me there, or any grimy hand to come and take what's mine, yeah. My brother had a spite real well, and they don't take no shit. Straight off the ship with 3 brothers by her side. She ain't playing no games, she's gonna stay alive. Well, it wasn't too long till they went out west for the freedom on the land, Annie Oakley on the breeze, shooting straight from the hip. See, come see on the mountain. If we don't play, no. Easy on the way. Welcome to the mountain peak. Welcome to the mountain peak. Run gone wrong, said grandmother knows where, yeah, you know. Tree flaming well, told me that a copycat comes around the sea, but the true-hearted folk would never keep it forever. Forever be true in a folk heartland. Easy on the breeze, say yeah. I-oh, easy on the breeze, easy on the breeze as it goes. You ever see the blind man on the side of the road? That's me, no. And see deep inside. You can see deep inside. Deep inside, deep inside, say. Just looking for a spring breeze at a winter's end, but you know it's coming down. Full moon, not yet wrong to say. Easy on the breeze, oh. Gotta heal it up, say. Gotta heal it up all the way. What a wise woman told me. So you could laugh in my face, you could call me a old man, you could call me a toothless waste of space, but I know folk souls forevermore. That's for sure, you know. Grandmother said, easy on the breeze, grandson. Said, treat my granddaughter well. You treat her well like a man. You could suck your thumb in the the corner like a child with a toy and a snack for you. Or you could be a man, love her all the way. Only if she deserves it, though, you know. Make sure she's a good folk soul. She holds a heart flame, you know. Does she hold a heart flame? Well, grandmother knows and you can't fool her. It's like the pouring rain. Catch you in a lie, you better tell the truth and come from the heart and burn that ember high. You know, heart's flame. Easy on the breeze, oh. Grandmother on the way, easy on the breeze. Grandfather, right, be waiting in the woodland, be waiting in the woodland, be grandmother, flame tree and well, easy on the way, yeah. Easy on. Right. That's where I pause. All right. Awesome. Sounds good. Chapter 15, The Hunt. Get comfortable, right? You know what? How about a swig of a drinky? Help me here. Mm-hmm. Yep. More gigantic beverage. Oh. Okay. Chapter 15, The Hunt. The glade lay quiet, its green grass glowing under the afternoon sun, making it seem like an emerald in the dark setting of the surrounding forest. Nothing moved there, save the dust motes dancing in the rays of light, and a few birds pecking over the ground round a rotted log. Then some sound seemed to alarm the birds. They flew up together in a whir of wings as a form leaped through a last screen of underbrush into the clearing. It was a wild figure that bounded out onto the open ground, naked but for a tattered remnant of a tunic. Lean muscles pumping, long, unbound hair flying behind. It paused on the margin of the open space, crouching, looking warily about it with the hairy, desperate eyes of the hunted beast. Then it went on, sweeping across the ground with the fleetness of a great buck, slipping away into the trees, into the clearing's far side. Not long after, a group of figures pushed out of the brush into the clearing. 2 bears led the nightmare band, followed by several creatures, more or less man-like, but all equally monstrous. They were clustered quite close. Now be careful. As if for security, and moved very slowly. They too stopped as they entered the glade, looking round them searchingly. All seemed weary, and several looked most disgruntled. The bloody raven eat his stinking flesh, the wolf-headed one growled. The wolf-headed one growled. We're still no closer to him. All the night we've hunted him, never even getting him in sight. Now his tracks are lost altogether. It's the bear's fault, bleated one of the ram-headed warriors. They've not the noses for following a trail. One of the bears snarled angrily in reply. It's not them. It's not them, the Weasley one whined. That man is like a wraith, so he is, flitting away through the woods. All I know is that my arms are giving me great pain, he cried, the other ram-headed man, looking upon his badly burned and swollen forearms. I want to go back to the Cid and have them looked to. Aye, agreed the weasel, rubbing a blistered neck. I know what you mean. The lad did fine for the lot of us back there, too. He did that, grunted a stocky, boar-headed man. And I thought the old hag was to see him. Make him harmless, she said. Harmless, ha! Well, she may have taken his memory with the spell she put on the lake, said the first ram's head, but there's still something driving him, that's certain. Careful, said Wolfhead in a warning whisper. Here comes herself. The horse-like beast moved out from the woods, Malukhrod astride it, pulled up behind the gathering, and she glared down upon them. Why have you stopped? She demanded. Keep on. We've got to capture him. We're not going to capture him this way, grumbled the burned ram's head. He's too fast and he's too wily. We'll never catch up to him. The dark druid will give you something more terrible to wear upon you than the head if you fail, she threatened. And maybe he'll do the same to yourself as well, the other boldly returned. Begging your pardon, Malakrod, the horse-like being spoke up, his voice a throaty rumble. But these poor creatures are right. They can't come up with that lad this way. But one of my fellows can. Now the sun's risen. They can find him, and they can come ahead of him. I hope so, she said to it, then directed a warning glare upon the rest. But none of you can afford to wait. See, spread out. Keep searching for his track. Keep after him. You want us to split up, mistress? The Weasley one said uneasily. Looking round him at the shadows between the trees, several others followed suit. You cowards, she said scornfully. I tell you, he's no danger. He's confused and he's unarmed. He's harmless. He's giving a good imitation of the opposite. The wolf head muttered, rubbing a bruised shoulder. Quiet, she ordered, and get moving. They grumbled, but they went, splitting up into several groups and moving out in different directions. It'll be plain luck if they happen on anything, the Puka muttered. Only my lads will have a chance. Someone must, she said darkly. Someone must, for I'll not answer to Fyodor alone. Now, on with you. The animal carried her off after one of the parties. When they left the clearing, it was again deserted. Malakrod did not know that the eyes of the very one she sought had watched her from not so very far away. Finn had observed and marked the direction each of the parties took. Pardon me. Take a drink. Should I blow my nose off camera? I'll read better. You know, nothing more embarrassing than to have a nice large snotty on your face while you're reading. Oh, nasty. Why? Okay. Where am I at? Oh, okay. Finn had observed and marked the direction. A little bit of backtrack. Finn had observed and marked the direction that each the parties took. Now he set off in a way that would remove him from the vicinity of all the hunters. This is what I learned about, like coughing. You like blow your nose. Who gives a shit? You can breathe. It's better. Trust me. Who cares if you're live? Doesn't matter. Only his hunting instincts seemed to be sustaining him, to be carrying him forward, even though his memory was gone. His eyes scanned the way ahead warily as he moved forward. His body was always taut and ready. See how I speak better after I blew my nose? He was truly little more than a wild beast now. Made no noise. His leather-shod feet cracked. No stray twig rustled. No dry thatch. He slipped through the underbrush and under the hanging tree branches, touching nothing. Oop. Skills are waking up. Remember, never to even disturb one leaf or twig, something like that. The fleetness of the Fionn warriors the prowess. Indeed, seeming like a wraith gliding so rapidly through the wood. But as he moved, his eyes fixed intently on the scene ahead, another vision came into his mind. It overlaid the image of lights and shadowed forest with another much like it, hazy and dreamlike at first, but clarifying to a scene more real than what was before him. Slipping stealthily through this imagined forest was a boy he somehow knew to be himself, clad in a shirt of leather, clutching a rude spear, stalking a tall stag who moved before him. And the vivid picture slid quickly into others that flickered by like objects. Okay, hold on a stream of shimmering light of himself as a child playing in glens and woods, of him sitting with solemn, sharp-faced old woman who spoke to him of the lore of the woods, or with a cheery, round-faced woman who told him tales of great palaces and kings. The bewildering flow of images brought him to a halt, his body swaying from the disorienting effects. His eyes squeezed closed, and he frowned as if in a deep concentration. But the images were gone. He shook his head, opening his eyes. Only the real forest, the strange forest filled with his unknown enemies, lay about him now. And he was still alone. He moved on through the forest again, traveling some distance. He saw no signs of danger, no signs of other beings at all, save for a few hares, some small birds, and one great hawk which soared overhead and passed, swooping down into the treetops far ahead. He made his way farther, soon coming onto the edge of another but much broader glade, paused within the shelter of the brush, gazing out. It was empty except for a single black-sided cow who sat chewing in a lazy, rhythmic way upon the lush grass. Still, it could be a dangerous place to cross, leaving him in the open for a time. He might have skirted it, but his gaze fell upon something and fixed there, not far from the feeding cow. In a hollow nearly in the center of the space, a small pool shimmered. As he stared at the water, a longing filled his eyes. His tongue licked thirstily, crossed his parched lips. He had been all night on the run without a drink. Oh, remember the lake? She cursed it. Careful. The desire clearly overcame his caution. He moved from his cover and crept out toward the pool. Cow lifted its head and stared at him, looked a rather rotund animal sitting primely upon its knees. Its face was quite placid. It seemed little concerned by him. After a brief glance, it dropped its head back and went on with its browsing. When Finn moved past it to the pool, it paid him no mind. Once at the water's edge, he cast a careful, searching look about the surrounding woods. There was no sign of movement. There were no suspicious sounds, seeming satisfied. He knelt down by the water, leaned forward, and drank. He drank deeply, lifting up to let the water trickle down his chin and throat onto his chest, splashed more into his blackened face and over his scorched arms. He leaned down for another long drink and then sat up, expelling a great sigh of pleasure. There was a low, short huff of sound, and he glanced round. The cow now got into its feet rather agilely for such a hefty beast and was striding toward him. He seemed to be moving toward the pool to drink, and Finn looked away, only to glance back again in surprise as the huffing came again, this time from far to close. This time he looked into the face of a beast that was most certainly moving purposefully toward him, and the eyes that were fixed with an undoubtable malevolence upon him were not a cow's liquid brown ones, but the slitted glinting yellow of a serpent. Finn threw himself backward as the creature charged upon him. It wheeled, snapping out at him with a mouthful of teeth whose sharp points were clearly meant for more violent work than chewing cud. He rolled sideways. The cow moved too, leaping agilely to stay above him. Snapping down at him, he rolled back the opposite way with a savage and most un-cow-like roar. He reared up, looming over him, then sweeping out at him with feet not hooved, but fitted with the long talons of a giant hawk. Desperately he rolled forward, this time right under the beast as it dropped down again, its feet thudding heavily to the earth. He went on. Under its belly and out behind it, it wheeled round and lifted to drop atop him as he rose. Its foreclaws caught him in both shoulders, the keen points digging into his flesh. It dug in with its hind feet, trying to drag him back. He couldn't move forward. He couldn't turn. He struggled to pull loose, but the effort only ripped his pierced flesh more. The powerful legs of the creature pulled him back, while the huge mouth opened, prepared to snap its rending teeth into his neck when he was within reach and finish him like a cat finishing a hare. He couldn't move away from it, so he moved in. Fighting technique. He thrust suddenly back against the forelegs, then dropped down and heaved the beast over one shoulder. It was taken off guard and rolled forward, but held on, carrying him with it. Locked together, they rolled down and into the pool. They thrashed their way out into the water. Finn managed to twist about and hold its head away with straining arms when the beast began to strike at him, with its hind feet raking his legs with its claws. In the middle of the pond, the waters were deep enough to swallow them. They sank down, still struggling, and disappeared beneath the surface. Now the whole pool boiled, its surface churned to a white froth by the furious activity beneath. For a time longer than it seemed possible for any air-breathing being to survive, it continued unabated, but at last it began to fade, the pond settling finally to calm again. For several heartbeats more, there was no movement. Hold on. For several heartbeats more, there was no movement. Then, suddenly, a great form whooshed to the surface, like a whale surfacing, the wet, round body form of the black Caolite being bobbed there. And then it rolled, the yellow eyes staring blindly upward for a last moment before it sank again under the water. And as it vanished, another form shot up. Finn surfaced, giving a great gasp of air. Then weakly he splashed to the pool's edge, drawing himself out with agonizing slowness, dragging himself onto the verge. He collapsed there, panting with exhaustion. Streams of blood from the wounds across his shoulders flowing down to tint the water that streamed from his body. "He escaped you!" Fyodor shouted, jumping to his feet. He swept back a frail, goat-headed woman who had been washing his feet, scattering a bevy of other hybrid servants hovering about as he strode out into the center of his cavern to confront Malukrod. She stood before him within the circle of tables. The scores of other degenerate Danans who sat about them had been stilled by his rage, giving over their carousing to watch in silence, their predatory gazes fixed on her. "He escaped you," he repeated, this time in outrage and disbelief, striding up to her, shaking the fist, and gripped his Druid rod close in her face. "You promised me you would destroy him, and you failed." She drew herself up, eyeing him fearlessly, defiantly, and indignantly. "I did not fail. My scheme worked perfectly. I lured him into the lake. I took his memory with the spell, and I put upon its waters. I even used my cloak's magic to disguise his scent and separate him from his friend. I did what no one, not even the most powerful of druids," she paused, and gave him a sneer of superiority, "has ever done, to strip Fimmak Coomhall of his powers and his weapons. I've made him harmless." He swept out the knobbed end of the staff, flicking it beneath the cloak she wore, throwing it back to reveal her nakedness. "It's clear you did more with him than that," he shot back. "No wonder you couldn't manage to destroy him. It was, as I feared, your own desire interfered. That's what allowed him to escape." She jerked the cloak back round her. "You're not the one to be speaking of such a thing," she told him hotly. "It was your own foolish desires which have caused all this." He brought the rod up, swinging the tip to press against her throat, forcing her head back. "Watch your words, woman," he said, grating out the words. "I've little patience left." This threat cooled much of the heat of her audacity. She stepped back, her voice placating now. "Forgive me, my high druid. I may have erred, but please remember I did this only to help you." He considered, then seemed somewhat appeased. "Yes," he said, lowering the stick. "I suppose you did. And what I have done truly has been successful." Wait. This is her. "And what I have done truly has been successful," she went on. "Finn is no danger to you now. He has no memory of you or of the girl. He has no identity. He can use none of his powers. His weapons are lost. There's little he can do now but wander aimlessly." "Not good enough," he said sharply. "He is still dangerous, as his escape proved. And what if he were to find help or somehow to have his memory returned? He's overcome she magic before." He shook his head. "No, I'll take no more chances with this one while he's without his memory. Without friends or weapons, he's vulnerable. Now is the time to finish him, and I mean to see to it myself." "Yourself?" she said. "Yes, woman. Go to your cavern of glass. Use your powers. Seek him. Find him again. And when you do, tell me. I will go to him this time. I mean to see him before me. Before me when he dies. I want to make him crawl before me like a slug, and then I will slowly squash the life from him." This brought sadistic glee from the gathering. Yes, he said, smiling about at them. This time I'll take my own revenge. It's like arc villain. End of that chapter. Chapter 16. Chapter 16, Caolite. The dark warrior trudged toward the slope of the fortress of Almhuin, warily. The weapons of Finn Macumhall upon his back, the two hounds of the young captain flanking him. It's Caolite, a watchman atop the wall called down into the yard. Caolite is back. A Fian warrior named Luke Hade heard this and rushed up below the watchman to call back, Caolite, and is he alone? He has Bronn and Skilon with him. The man replied, but there is no Finn. Others in the yard, hearing this news, began to drop their work and congregate about the gates, murmuring in the wandering tones. By the time Caolite Macronin stepped through the gates, he found himself accosted by an excited throng. Caolite, what happened? They asked. Where is Finn? I don't know, he answered irritably, pushing through them. Then he saw Luke Hade moving through the crowd toward him. He seized the warrior's arm in relief. Luke Hade, it's good to see you. Listen, we must host the clans at once. I need your help. It's Finn. What happened to Finn? The warrior asked. I don't know, Caolite said again, but he needs our help. You've got to host the clans. Come into the hall. The other urged him, took Caolite's arm and directed him through the crowd to the hall's main door. What's wrong with you? Caolite asked him. We've got no time to waste. Get the door, Fion. We've got to host at once. The other seemed not to take note of Caolite's plea. His expression was neutral, his manner reserved. Just come into the hall, he said again. You'll understand. There's a court there now. Some chieftains arguing a division of wages. Court? Caolite said in surprise as they crossed the threshold of the vast room. But who can be presiding over... He stopped. Staring ahead of him, 100 warriors filled the hall. The druids and justices of the Fianna sat at the table upon the dais, resplendent in their gowns and torques of office. But his gaze was fixed only on the figure who sat in the seat of the captain, a figure who now rose on seeing Caolite, and fixed upon the dark warrior the gaze of his single eye. Golmac Morna! Caolite exclaimed in shock. His eyes swept around the room, noting the rotund figure of Gol's brother Conan, in the green plaid cloaks of many warriors of the Clan Namorna. Then he strode out into the center of the room toward Gol, calling to him in an accusing tone, And what is the chieftain of the Morna clan doing in the stronghold of the Barshin and sitting in the place of Finn Macumhall? Gol lifted a hand in a gesture of restraint. I understand that what it is you're thinking, Caolite, he said in a careful, placating way. But there is no treachery here. I've come only at the order of the High King. You mentioned no treachery in the High King in one breath, Caolite shot back. Ha! I should have known he'd not miss such a chance to act against Finn. Nor would you. That is close to insult, Macronin, Gol replied indignantly. We've had a rivalry in the past, but that's long ended. I'm as loyal to Finn as yourself. But when he disappeared, he left the Fianna leaderless. My loyalty to it is greater than to him. I agreed to come here to see to things, but only until his return. He leaned forward, adding pointedly, if he does return, that's for you to tell us. Where is Finn? What's happened to him? I don't know, Caolite answered again, this time with a tone of weariness. I don't know. What's he saying? One of the chieftains called out in disbelief. Hasn't he the very weapons of Finn strapped upon his own back? Now, is that the storm shield and the MacLueen you're carrying, Gol? Asked. They are, the dark warrior admitted. Oh, shit. He pulled them from his shoulders, setting them down upon a nearby table. Gasps, surprise, and mutters of consternation from the assembly as they craned forward to look at the fabled weapons. Then one warrior more loudly voiced the thought that had been going through everyone's minds. Finn is dead. By all the gods of Ire, Finn must be dead. No, Caolite shouted, whirling toward the man. You can't say that. Yet there's little else but death that would separate Finn MacCoomhall from his weapons and his two hounds. Okay, hold on. Yet there's little else but death that would separate Finn MacCoomhall from his weapons and his hounds, Gol said reasonably. How else could it be? I found the weapons, Caolite said, then left the hounds and myself for a time and didn't return. When we went seeking him, we found these. He hesitated, then went on reluctantly. On the shore of a lake. Finn's drowned then, someone cried. I don't believe that, Caolite retorted. Finn was like the otter in the water, and there's no power that could have drowned him. Even Finn isn't immortal. Hold on, Gol. Even Finn isn't immortal, Gol pointed out. And did you find something to make you believe Finn was still alive? No, I didn't, Caolite said unhappily. We searched about the lake for signs of him and found nothing. Then, more aggressively, he added, But I know Finn is alive. I'd feel it if it was otherwise. So would the hounds. You've a loyalty for your friend that I admire, Gol said. But my mind makes me see this more practically. If Finn were alive, why wouldn't he come back to you? If he had left the lake, why couldn't the noses of Braun and Skilon, the finest hunting dogs in Ireland, find scent of him? I don't know, Caolite said in exasperation. Could be some magic, some sudden scheme of his own, and it could be something else. Put in the white-haired druid called Kenneth. We all know Finn had become most strange over his loss. Had your year of searching given him any hope? No, Caolite was forced to reply truthfully. He'd become more lost in his sorrow, if anything, more defeated. Then maybe he had given up, the druid suggested. Bards know many and a sad tale of lovers, given up their lives for ones they've lost. If Finn had decided he'd ever find her again, maybe it was a blessing for him to swim out and let him sink quietly beneath the waves of that. Okay, I like that. Okay, here we go. Again, Caolite was forced to reply truthfully. He had become more lost in his sorrow, if anything, more defeated. Then maybe he had given up, the Druid suggested. The bards know many and many a sad tale of lovers, giving up their lives for ones they've lost. If Finn had decided he'd never find her again, maybe it was a blessing. Maybe for him to swim out and let himself sink quietly beneath the waves of that. That could never be true, Caolite shouted at him. None could think he'd do that. And why not? Spoke up the ruddy-faced hound master called Comrag. Finn had gone raving, mad over the woman. He didn't care about anything else. Not the Fianna, not the clan, not the fighting or the hunt. Not even you, Caolite, and you know it well. You said many times yourself he'd been giving up everything else for her. He'd given up everything else for her. Why not his life? But he's still your chieftain, he said to Comrag, then swung his eyes back to goal. And he's still the captain of all the Fions. We can't just think him dead. We've got to look for him. That's why I came back here. We must host every warrior in Ireland. Every warrior in Ireland. If it comes to that, we must look for Finn. Gold's look grew doubtful at that. There were murmurings of protest from about the room. I don't know, Caolite, Gold said. There is no reason to believe Finn is alive. There is no greater loss to us, and we must mourn him. But to host the entire Fianna to seek him seems unnecessary. And even if he is somehow alive, it would seem that it must be his choice to return, as it was his to leave. If he does not, maybe he truly is mad. In either case, someone must assume the leadership. And that would be you, Caolite said bitterly. Well, there'll be no mourning for Finn till his body is seen. And no man will take his place until there is no question that he'll never return. Please understand, Caolite, Gaul said in a reasoning way. I've no more liking for this than yourself, but there's nothing else to be done. It's the good of Ireland we must all be thinking of. The truth of it is that Finn is gone, dead or not. The logic is that someone must take command. Still, for your sake, I'll not take his place until he's been wanting to us for the length of 3 years, until no person in Ireland has any hope of seeing him again. After that, I'll have no chance but to let the High King put the captaincy upon me. That's what you say, is it? Caolite returned angrily. That's your fairness. He looked about at the other warriors. Do you all support this? Would you all abandon Finn and see Gaul as your captain? Most of them stood silent, averting their gazes and shifting uneasily. But one chieftain spoke up in a defensive way. There's little enough we have to say about it. We need a leader. We need a leader that's right enough. We're all bound to accept the Brehon laws and the oaths we made in joining the Peons. They say it's right that Gaul should take the leadership. And he is a fair man, said another chieftain. We've had hearings in his court and justice too. Something Finn had given over long ago. To this there were mutterings of agreement. So that's the way of it, Caolite said. His eyes moved more slowly over the crowd, picking out the Bashin and what of Finn's clansmen. Will they help? He looked around to Luke Hade, who had followed him in and stood close by. Luke Hade, what about you? It was Finn's choice to leave, the man said uncomfortably. He said then he'd have no more to do with us. Now, well, there doesn't seem much to do. He left you, Caolite raged, his pent-up frustration giving way. Strode to Luke Hade, seizing him by the tunic, dragging him close. After the risks he's taken for you, for all Ireland. His eyes, after his restoring the clan, making the Fianna a great force, defeating the king of the great world, when his army would have destroyed you. After that, you can abandon him? Traitor! Treacherous! Wolf! Comrade rushed in, grabbing Caolite about the waist, dragging him off Luke Hade and throwing him back. Caolite grabbed his sword hilts. The two hounds crouched, snarling. We want no fight with you, Comrade said, but you've no right to call us traitors. Finn went mad over a woman, we all know that. It was he who abandoned us. Now he's likely dead or gone for good, and that's an end to it. If your own friendship for him has blinded you to the truth, well, then you become as mad as he. Mad, am I? You. Caolite stepped forward, the sword starting to come out of his sheath. Other warriors moved to draw. Hold on! Hold on! Gaul shouted warningly. All eyes went to him. Caolite, if you draw your blade here, I'll not be responsible. You are welcome, but only if you've come in peace and can accept our will. I'll not do that, he retorted, shoving back the sword. Maybe I am as mad as Finn now, but I'll not give up. He is my friend, no matter what he's become. Picked up Finn's weapons and slung them again on his back. Looked at the two hounds. Well, lads, are you with me? Or are you thinking as the rest of them now? They moved at once to him, tails wagging eagerly. I thought so, he said. Turned and started toward the door, the hounds trotting at either hand. No one interfered. All watched in silence, some defiantly, some sullenly, some with the flush of shame as he neared the door. Gaul called out after him. Wait, what will you do? Caolite paused on the threshold, looking back to him, the light of determination flaring in his dark eyes. That I don't know, he threw back. But my friend's out there, and somehow I'm going to find him. I found him, Mulukrod said as the dark druid came into the sphere of glass. Stepped across the room, his eyes already fixed upon the screen. Where? He said, staring, eyes narrowed. It's so dark. The sphere's curved walls did seem almost black, but the glow from a nearly full moon and the stars of a clear night sky faintly illuminated the scene, revealing that they appeared to hang above a countryside of rolling meadows, spotted with the darker clumps of woods. "There," she said, dropping them closer and closer. A dim figure had just come into view, moving out from the cover of a stand of trees. "Are you certain that is Finn?" the Druid said, skeptically peering down. "He looks like some creature in the woods." That is Finn," she said with conviction. "That is Finn. I've been watching him for some time, to be certain." "So Finn," he said. "So Finn." Gloating. "You are reduced to this. What a sorry sight our captain has become. I'm almost reluctant to put you out of such exquisite misery." "But you do so?" she asked. "Are you certain that to leave him so, a poor wreck, wandering the woods, would not be a more fit punishment?" Perhaps it would," he agreed. "But as long as he lives, there is a chance he will recover, and Sob will have some hope to cling to him. No, this time I mean to show his ragged corpse to her. I'll make preparation with the pukas to leave at once. You make certain where he is and which way is moving." Did I start reading? Let's see. I did. Wow. Let's see where I am. Oh, wow. Oh. Okay. "I don't want him becoming lost again." Turned and strode toward the tunnel. She waved a hand and lifted the sphere higher, revealing the moonlit landscape for some distance round. "Wait," she said suddenly, staring intently into the distance. "What is that?" He stopped and looked back, then wheeled about and returned to her eye. He returned to her eyes, fixed on the same spot. Below the dark tree-fringed line of the horizon was a large patch that seemed nearly circular and glowed more brightly than the rest of the open countryside. "I'm not certain," he said. "Where did you say we were?" "I've not figured it exactly yet," she said, "but near to the Sleeve Nombon. Well, whatever it is, that Finn is making directly for it. Go closer." He gestured the sphere forward, and it swooped toward the horizon. The patch grew larger, shapes more definitely circular. "Sleeve Nombon," she said musingly, examining the spot. Then, with the look of dawning realization, she turned him up. "But I do know of that place, isn't it?" Ahead, some most peculiar objects had become visible within the circle's boundaries. "Oh no," the Druid said, staring with dismay. "Not there." The figure staggered between two trees, stumbled badly and fell, rolling into a beam of moonlight, slanting down through the branches. The pale light revealed a figure that seemed more some awful specter than a living man. Finn's hair was matted and dark, his clothing tattered, his body streaked with the blood from his shoulder wounds. He was wretchedly lean now, and the pale flesh of his sunken cheeks glowed brightly as if with fervor. With an effort, he forced himself to his feet and moved on into another area of the thick woods. Here, out of the glow of the bright moon, it was extremely dark, the blackness only accentuated by the occasional silver shafts of light shooting down through gaps in the treetops. There were shrill sounds of night birds and the distant cry of a wolf, victorious in the hunt. The eerie nature of the woods raised new images, a complex of terrible visions in the worn and fevered brain of Finn. He saw scenes of savage battles, of terrible slaughters, the piles of grinning heads, all kinds of horrors. Toothless hags, fire-spitting wraiths, snarling wolves, reptilian monsters, giant birds, men in gleaming armor, seemed to be rushing upon him at once, crowding in to engulf him, to rend and to devour him. So vivid did these hallucinations become that he glanced about him with alarm, as if these things were really rushing at him from the trees. "No, no," he cried in panic, waving his hands about him wildly to fend them off, running away through the woods at a reckless pace, heedless of direction, moving blindly in the darkness. He stumbled along some way, suddenly coming out of the trees onto the edge of the precipice. Unable to stop himself, he fell forward, rolling and tumbling down a slope, landing abruptly, heavily in a crumpled heap at the bottom. With a low moan for the new, additional pain, he managed to pull himself up to a sitting position and look around him. The shock of the fall had driven the nightmare images away, but the reality that his eyes now fell upon, he stared at with almost as great a wonder. Slowly, still staring, got to his feet and walked forward. His fatigue seemed momentarily forgotten in his fascination. His look was puzzled as he gazed about. Was this real or another hallucination? It was certainly a most bizarre and yet beautiful sight. The round white moon hung in a sky so clear that the stars were glinting pinpoints, like jewels set in a shield of smooth black iron. The light of stars and moon cast a hard, even blue-white light that illuminated the scene with a startling clarity. It revealed a broad field stretching away in a wide curve to either side. The light shone against the lush covering of grass, making the level surface glow sapphire. It gleamed whitely against the scores of peculiar objects dotting the open ground. Finn moved out onto the plain, examining the objects with great curiosity. They seemed to be of two distinct types. One was a simple structure formed of two massive stones, almost as tall as himself, roofed over with a third, flatter stone. This piece was so large that it seemed no number of men could possibly lift it atop the other two, even though the things were clearly not natural formations. He stopped to examine one of these structures closely, peering beneath the stone roof at a hollow in the earth which it sheltered. The objects of the second type were stone monoliths, mostly much taller than himself, and all standing upright, thrusting toward the night sky. They were rectangular, some crudely hewn, some skillfully cut into obelisks, with sharply mitered corners. He paused to examine one of those more closely as well. It arose of deep groves like ladder rungs, incised neatly into the stone of the corners. They showed as sharp black lines against the moonlit stone. There was no order to the placement of these enormous pieces. Some were widely scattered across the open ground, separate and aloof. Some were grouped like sleeping herds of strange, massive beasts under the clear, hard light. The effect of the whole collection was both stark and mysterious. Finn made his way out onto the plain, winding amongst the looming stones, a tiny, lonely figure there. He looked about him with an expression of reverential awe, as if he could sense some sacred nature to the place. But then his gaze fell upon something else. Near the center of the circular plain of stones, there rose a hill. It was wide and low and smoothly rounded, with a flattened crest. And atop this crest, there glowed squares of golden light. It looked quite warm and pleasing in contrast to the chill light of the field. Drew closer, and it became clear that a single structure filled the whole hilltop. It was an enormous liss whose curved walls were pierced by many windows and an open door from which the light poured out like liquid gold. And from the smoke hole in its high-peaked roof, a plume of smoke lit silver by the moon rose up into the night. He hesitated, staring up toward it with a look of misgiving. He recalled a similar image of the liss of the Malakrod as he had first seen it. But from this house, the aroma of food came to him, and silvery notes of a harp's strings drifted out on the quiet air. These called up another cheering image of a bright hall filled with feasting, laughing comrades, and a cunning little harper plucking out a lively tune. A light of hope appeared in the worn face of Finn, and he moved on toward the lists again. He plodded on, and it became clear that the house was much larger and much farther away than it had first seemed. It grew in size very slowly as he approached it, and the hill gradually swelled upward. Still, he would soon reach it if he could just keep on. And now, with the harper's tune, he could hear it. Other sounds of human warmth and pleasantness, the occasional sound of a laugh, and the fair, high sound of a woman's voice lifted in song. Like a starved wolf drawn by the scent of a cooking fire, the lean and wasted young man crept closer, closer. His face was now shining with eagerness. Soon he would reach it, soon. Then suddenly he staggered as if he had been struck a blow, spun him round and dizzied him. He almost fell, caught himself, gazing about him warily. There was no sign of anyone or anything, but he did get a different and greater shock, for now, instead of the mound being just before him, it was far away, as if it somehow had shifted to another place. He shook his head as if not believing this part of his general bewilderment or his fevered hallucinations. Then he started toward the mound again. Once more it grew closer, closer, closer. Without incident, he approached the base of the slope. Again, there came the dizzying rush, the image before him blurring as if he had been violently spun away. And again, he was now looking off across the empty space, only to turn and find the hill far away in another direction. His strength was clearly ebbing quickly now. He was stooping with fatigue, sagging with despair as this last hope grew so unattainable it could no longer sustain him. Still, with no other chance of salvation left to him, he could only stum equals house once more. Step by painful step, he dragged closer as before. He heard the voices, smelled the food. He reached the mound's base. He had only to take one more step to be upon the slope. He was wrenched about and tossed away with an even greater force to find himself once again far from the house. This time, the disorienting effects knocked him down. And this time, his energy nearly gone, he could not rise. He still crawled forward, face lifted to the light. That was his only hope. Tears of desperation and frustration streaking his dirty face. It took a great while for him to crawl up near the mound's base again, stopping just short of the place he had reached before. By dint of an enormous effort, more of will than effort, he pulled himself up and propped himself against a tall spire of stone. He raised a hand imploringly toward the house and opened his mouth to call out. His voice caught, coming out a faint, hoarse croaking from his dry throat. He coughed, and then he tried again. This time there issued a harsh, strangled animal cry of pain, and with this effort came the end of his strength. He sagged forward, crashing heavily to the ground. And that is the end of that chapter. The next chapter is The Tale of Fire. Okay. That's where I take a break. Oh, yeah. Good. Sit up. Get a drinky. An outro, baby. Yeah. Delicious. Yummy. That's how we like it. Nice and silky smooth. Easy on the way. Easy on the way. Easy on the way. Yeah, yeah. Oh, see. Be running wild in the wild land, working real hard to remember who I am. Be a wild man in a wild land. Easy on the way, yeah. On the way, on the way. See, do you see me now? Do you see me now? Say it. See me now. Do you see me now? Grandmother on the way. You said. Grandfather in the woodland bee. Grandfather in the woodland bee. Oh. Easy. easy on the way, you know. Wild man in the woodland bee, everything stripped away, but his instinct to survive. Say, you never know. You're a wild man in the woodland, say. Yes, I would know. Madman, woodland bee. Madman in the woodland bee. Oh. Easy on the breeze as it goes. Tears running down his face, out of control. See, such a proud warrior, such a great hero, fall on his face in the dirt and the pouring rain. Is it on the way? Wild man said, all I got left is a deep down search for love. Say it, love me forevermore. Say sweet love. You said head like a burning fire. Will you dance on fire? Will you surround me? Oh, on the moonlit sky, stars circle overhead. You said you would love me forevermore. But I sit here in the pouring rain. Some say, you know, can rain all the time. The crows fly overhead, you know. You have entered the dark woods as you go. Easy on the way, there'll be a dark hand looking for you. Say you will be true to love. Don't fall away. Oh. Look into the flames, into the flame. Oh, 'cause everybody knows. See, victory is love. Forevermore, see the say it. But I know you don't see me anyway. I'm just a wild man in the woodland bee. You circle around me. Wise one circle all around me. Oh, I can see you in the flames, see you in the flames. See you in the reflection in the pond. I can see you all around in the woodland bee. remember his name. Searching like a wild man, a folk trying to stay free, just falling down to say no. Easy on the way, and make it all the way. We're gonna make it all the way. See, you know. Gonna make it all the way. See. Free the folk now. Robin, I-O-I-A-M. Robin, I-O-I-am. Easy on the way, you know. Standing in the pouring rain, said, she's out there. Just keep on going on. See, Druid don't know. Rough as I am, see, vision. See, Druid down, say. Dance around the fire, you said. Grandfather, no. Tree flaming well, you said. But they left me in the pouring rain. Easy on the way, Remember, there's someone out there. Someone out there, yeah. Oh, oh. Come back to low. Come back to low. You see, come back to low. Blurring out my voice like a sound from a rushing wave. I tap tonight. Oh, yeah. Easy on the way. Dance around the fire with wheel. Easy on the wave, you know. It's a simple song just to carry on. See, Druid don't know. See, Druid, see, Druid don't. See, Druid don't. That's a sacred fire with me. Dance round fire with me, folk soul, living memory, a remedy. Oh, you know, folk soul is forevermore. See vision. Grandmother, grandfather on the way. On the way. Grandmother, grandfather on the way. Thank you. Circle around. Thank you so much for listening, feeling. Have a great imagination.